Hello, everyone. So we are live today here with High Counselor and Summit to talk about acing your career in software engineering in 2023. I am going to just wait a minute to see if everyone can log in and get joined in with us today. Just going to give everyone a minute to get logged in and settled before we get started. While I do wait, I will introduce myself. My name is Kinsley, and I'm one of the CSMs with High Counselor. And so I am joining you from South Georgia. If you feel comfortable dropping in the chat where you're joining from, I think it's always fun to see the different time zones and locations that are being represented. So feel free to just drop in the chat where it is that you're joining us from. And we certainly appreciate you joining us today. So I do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So I'm going to go ahead and get started and really just give you a little background about High Counselor. So we are a career accelerator that helps job seekers land their dream job through a 4-week training process that covers important topics and concepts that are typically asked during interviews. So this is interview prep. You're going to go through this interview prep and attend behavioral, HR, and technical sessions, as well as getting your resume reviewed, your LinkedIn profile reviewed. So we're going to optimize both of those. You're going to attend sessions on networking, on salary negotiation. So all things that we help with through our instructors and one-on-one mock prep and various tools. We will help you simplify that networking process and the job application process. Really just wanting to make sure that you feel confident and comfortable moving into those interviews. We have automated email networking for candidates. We also provide direct referrals through different companies that are in our network. And we also have a really amazing automatic job application tool. One of the most unique services that High Counselor offers that I just think is really, really amazing is the real world projects. So you should definitely check out those projects that are conducted on LinkedIn. So head over to that LinkedIn page. If you're joining us from YouTube, just make sure that you check us out there. Because you'll just learn more about the projects and the things that we have going on and can get some experience through those real world projects. We'll provide links later for projects that we've got coming up. So we currently are assisting candidates that are focused on tracks in software engineering and data related roles. We also host info sessions every Tuesday and Thursday. I know this was just a couple minutes of the overview of High Counselor, but those info sessions on Tuesdays and Thursdays at 7 p.m. Eastern Time happen every week, which means that there is one tomorrow night. So definitely encourage you to just visit our website and sign up for one of those info sessions. You can go to highcounselor.com and see the sign up for those info sessions. And you can also see the application to join our program. And so our next program start date is on May 30th. That is a Tuesday because we've got a holiday on Monday. So definitely get those applications in if it's something you're interested in. And if you want to learn more info, join us in our info session on either Tuesdays or Thursdays. So as you all know, today we are focusing on acing your career in software engineering in 2023. And we have Sumit here with us, and he is currently working as a senior software engineer at Meta Reality Labs with Meta. He's been in the industry for 11 years, and he has previous experience at Samsung and Amazon and has led large-scale and long-term engineering initiatives. And those have contributed to a wide range of mobile and web applications, distributed web services, and machine learning. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to him because I know that you're all here to see what he has to say. So with that, I will turn it over to you.
Thanks, Kinsley. Thanks for the lovely introduction. Hey, everyone. And thanks, High Counselor, for giving me this opportunity to talk about the career as a software engineer and how to ace your interviews in 2023. Uh, in this presentation, we would go through the interview preparation tips, navigating the current layoffs that's going on in the industry, and also life as a software engineer and what you can do, what skills you can grow to grow as a software engineer in the industry. All right. And as Kinsley mentioned, I'm currently a senior software engineer at Meta Platforms. I have previous experience at Amazon and Samsung. I have taken interviews, I have participated in the hiring process, as well as I have applied to these companies. So I have certain experience in this field, and I hope that this presentation is helpful to you all. We can have Q&A in the middle of the presentation as well. So after each session, I will give you the opportunity to ask me some questions, and then we can move ahead from there. And feel free to post your questions in the comment section, and Kinsley and I will prioritize questions based on the time. All right, so let's get into it. We would start with interview preparation, and let's talk about the first thing, resume, right? So I wanted to go over certain resume tips. I work with a lot of early career or entry level job applicants, and whenever I review their resumes, I notice a few things that can be improved. So I just thought of having one slide on just the resume tips. First thing is, imagine yourself as the hiring manager, right? As someone who is the reader of your resume, and focus on things that would matter to the hiring manager. What that means is sequencing your content in your resume according to what matters most. So, in my personal experience, professional experience comes at the top. Then comes your individual projects or your university projects. Then comes your education background or any certifications you have done. And that's after that, you add your skills. Okay. And always focus on specific metrics. A lot of resumes have the content written in a way where you talk about what you have done in a certain project, but not about why that project was important or that project, what impact that project had in your team or in your company or for your university. Focus on that first, right? So the impact matters the most. Then focus on the scope of your influence, what your contribution was to that project, how many people you worked with, and show the complexity of the project. Why do you think the project was complex enough? What were the tools and technologies that you used, right? The third thing is necessary keywords. A lot of these companies that you would apply to, they would look for certain keywords that match their job descriptions, right? So for example, if you are an early career software engineer and you have worked in Java, make sure that you mention the programming language. If you have worked very closely on cloud technologies such as AWS or Azure or Google Cloud, make sure that you mention the specific services that you integrated with in your projects, right? Similarly, for mobile applications, for data science, for ML technologies, make sure that you include those. After that, the skills, instead of having that as a separate section, I think it always looks better if you have the skills in line with your professional experience or your projects, where you show that, okay, this is the project, this was the impact it had, I was able to work with and collaborate with so and so people, and I used so and so skills. To give you an example, I'm sure you would find a much better resume online, but I thought that I'll just use my own resume snapshot as an example and highlight what I mean by sequencing the content and focusing on specific metrics. So here's it. So you see, I have only taken the first two professional experience from my own resume. I have hidden certain confidential information, but I want to focus on the pieces that are highlighted here. So you would notice that if you look at the first section, it talks about 3 business metrics on XYZ platform and 15 plus system health metrics on XYZ. What it shows is in that project, when I was working on it, I made changes to the system that had impact on certain business metrics and certain system health metrics for a company product, right? It shows the impact of my project. Now, my role was as a lead. So I was leading that architecture where it shows that there could be other engineers, other product managers, other project managers who were also part of that project, but I was leading the whole project as an engineering initiative, right? In the second example, instead of focusing on the project impact, I have focused on what was the size or scope of the project. So I mentioned that I was leading a project which was multi-team project with 20 plus engineers. What it shows is that I can work with a team, I can collaborate with 20 plus engineers, and I can drive that project end to end, right? So that shows my scope of influence. You would also notice that I have added the skills that I utilized working on those projects in line with my experience. So you would see Java, C++, Hack, JavaScript, Android and iOS apps. This is basically a list of skills, tools, and technologies that I used while working on those projects during my tenure at Meta. You would see the same thing in my tenure at AWS, where I managed 15 plus deployment pipelines. So every team, a deployment pipeline is basically a pipeline for your code to be built and deployed, and then finally be available for production users, for real customers. So if I mention that I managed 15 plus deployment pipelines, that shows to the recruiters and hiring managers the size of the team, right? The scope of influence again. In the second example for AWS, you would see that I've talked about the monetary influence, the monetary impact of my contribution to the company. I talk about a couple of features that I led and launched successfully. So that's my contribution, but it contributed to 60% of the revenue for a certain business vertical in that company. So that shows the monetary impact, right? Again, the system that I built, 8 plus product categories. So what I wanted to show you with this example is the impact could be of different types. The impact could be system improvement. The impact could be an increment in the revenue. The impact could be growing a team, right? So depending on your role and the type of project, make sure that you focus on that impact. Make sure that you show your influence, and then make sure that you specifically mention what skills or tools and technologies you used in those projects. So that's basically is a high level list of tips and tricks I wanted to mention as a resume builder, right? Let's go into the interview preparation next. So for all the software engineering roles, specifically in a product company, there is a common set of skills that they look for. Whenever I talk to other people who I'm mentoring around interview preparation, I normally talk about uh, two different categories of companies and their interview preparation guidelines. The first category is majorly the product-based companies. If you have heard of the term FANG, companies like Meta, Apple, Amazon, Google, Netflix, Microsoft, Uber, Airbnb, all these companies, they have their own product that they make available to the customers, right? You can book your Airbnb, you can use Uber, so you are the end customer, right? So those are product based companies. And then there are companies which are either service based companies who are building product projects for some other agency or a company. And there are companies which require very niche skill set, right? A domain specific knowledge for a software engineer to work for them. The difference between these two categories of companies is that the first category, product based companies, they have a specific pattern which includes programming irrespective of the programming language. It includes system design, and it includes behavioral routes. The other category that would focus on specific skill set such as a specific programming language. If the project that they are hiring for that requires Java, they would ask you questions related to Java. If there is a company which is working on a project for a healthcare based client, they would need the domain knowledge in the healthcare industry, right? So those are the two categories. I would focus more on the first category here, which is the product based companies, and I would talk about the skills and preparation tips for those interviews, right? So the first skill set that you need to have are technical skills. As a software engineer, you would spend most of your time in your day-to-day work at these companies just coding and implementing different features in their product, right? So practice as much as possible for programming and for coding practices, right? There are very common platforms available to you, which is LeetCode, HackerRank, Interview Ready, all these, which where you can go and explore the problems, practice your solutions, try to solve them yourselves. If you are not able to solve them, you there would be hints and solutions available for you. So practice as much as possible. I normally treat these programming problems as mathematics, right? The more you practice, the better you would get. So just practice, practice, give yourself some time, give yourself a few months, keep practicing. There are also categories of problems divided by difficulty level. So there are like easy, medium, and hard problems, specifically on LeetCode. So wherever you are in your skill and in your experience, try to focus on those specific categories. Start from easy, go to medium, go to hard. A lot of companies normally ask easy or medium questions because they want to focus more on your problem solving skills and your approach in the interview than just hard problems, right? Uh, Also, familiarize yourself with popular programming languages and tools, but pick a language that you are most comfortable with. In these interviews, it doesn't really matter whether you are coding in Java or Python or C++. What they want to see is your ability to solve those problems, not the specific language that you are working with. The second thing is computer science concepts. This is basically goes hand in hand with the programming and coding problems. Uh, it's basically overlapping. So by computer science concepts, I mean familiarize yourself with the concepts of data structures, different data structures that are available, linked list, queues, trees, graphs, and algorithms for bitwise operators, string manipulation. There are multiple graph algorithms as well available that you should study, and how those are useful are that they are used to solve those problems, right? While you're practicing programming, these are the concepts that you would actually use to understand how to approach a problem, right? The two other topics or subjects that are taught in the universities or boot camps that I think are really important, really critical for programming interviews are operating systems and database management, right? Now these two, it's unlikely that these would be asked in the programming or coding interview rounds, but they help you be better as a software engineer and understand the concepts of system design. So these two have an overlap with the system design that I'll come to next. In operating systems, there are a lot of concepts like memory management, uh, the the space and time complexity. Those are also important concepts that you work with there. Database management, you might have heard of SQL and NoSQL databases. There are different use cases where you need to define or design a database, and you need to understand what type of database is suitable for designing a certain system. Is the use case for a search? Is the use case for an archival database? Is the use case for a key value based pair where you need more number of read operations than the write operations, right? So the optimizations around how you store your data is also a very important concept that you would use in a system design interview. Okay, let's go to the system design interviews. That's also a core technical skill for folks who are applying to entry level jobs or who are early in their experience as a software engineer. System design may not play as important of a role as programming or coding, but you may still have a round of system design in your interview cycle, right? So learn about the fundamentals of designing large scale systems. All these product based companies, they have customer bases in the scale of millions or billions, right? So the systems or the products that they are developing, they should scale to that customer base, right? So understand the concept of scalability and what are the things that you can do. And scalability can be a vertical or a horizontal scalability, where you can scale the system by just adding more infrastructure to it, right? More servers to it, or you can scale the system by optimizing in the way you are developing the applications, right? For example, if you are developing a mobile application, uh, if your application is very local to a phone where it's running, the constraints of the phone's operating system and the hardware matter more than the web-based infrastructure if you are building a web-based applications, right? So think about the scalability concepts, learn about those. There are three types of system design interviews that we have in the industry. The first one is a high level design interview or an architectural design interview. This is majorly focused on people who have more experience in the industry, and they are expected to work on a larger scope of projects in the company once they are hired. This architectural design would be focused on defining components such as web services, backend databases, mobile applications for a larger system. The question, an example question would be design Twitter, right? So Twitter is a big product in itself. The backend of Twitter would include like hundreds of services, I don't know, hundreds of databases. So the purpose of this design question would be to understand whether you are able to imagine the components that go in behind building such a large scale product, right? So that's basically architectural design, where the interviewer would expect you to talk about those components and then gradually dive deeper into individual components as the interview proceeds. The second type is a low level design, which focuses more uh, on specific entities or facets that you build in a certain design, right? So you can be asked questions such as define a class for a railway reservation system, right? Where you would define entities such as the reservation, train, or a person who is the customer, right? You define these entities, you define what attributes define these entities, and what are the methods or the functions applicable to these entities. If you know object oriented concepts, it becomes useful in the low level design. The third one is API design, where you would be given uh, a request response format, and you would need to design an API, which is application programming interface, where you take the input, you process the response, you process the request, and return the response. And the questions around API design would could also be around scalability, depending on how you optimize the input, what type of classes you define, right? But it could also be around things like throttling, right? Or protocol level discussions. What type of API protocols you used, whether it's SOAP or RESTful APIs, all those discussions. So familiarize yourself with those protocol concepts as well. In an interview, the most important thing is communicating your approach. So make it interactive. As you go on during the interview, make sure that you keep talking about your approach and you don't wait for the interviewer to ask questions. Rather, you explain your approach and proceed with the solution. Right. So yeah, these are the technical skills in your technical interview rounds. These things are important. Let's move to the next one, which is behavioral skills. Depending on the company that you're applying to, they have certain leadership qualities that they look for, irrespective of your experience in the industry. Even if you're joining as an entry level software developer, there are certain soft skills, certain leadership skills that they would look for. So it's always good to research about the company, know about their products, their culture, what are their values, and these are publicly available information. So you can go around on the internet and search for those. And most of the behavioral questions in the interviews would try to would try to understand if you have those skills and if you are fit for the company culture, right? It's always useful to demonstrate your interests as well. And when you go through the job description, right, it's always important to match your skills with the job description, right? Uh, these are the rounds where your past experiences would also be asked. So, any projects that you have worked on in the past, how did you deal with those projects? How did you? Were there situations where you had a conflict with a teammate, or if it's a university project, was there a conflict in approach with your advisor or your professor or another lead in your project, right? Questions like these, what they showcase is your approach towards solving a problem, not from a technical point of view, but just how you deal with people, right? So some of the common soft skills that I've seen almost every company appreciates in their employees are like three-fourths that I have mentioned in the slide. Always over communicate than under communicate. Whenever you feel that, okay, with the work that I'm doing, it's not worthy enough right now for me to tell people about it or make sure that the stakeholders know, more often than not, you would be wrong. It's always better to keep communicating about it with the stakeholders, keep the leaders updated. You would have a supervisor, you would have a manager in your company. They should always know what the progress is. If you are blocked, always call that out as well. Call out the risks, right? So never hesitate in communicating the status of the project, even irrespective of its whether it's positive or negative, right? Own your work as a leader. Whatever the scope of your work is, if you're working on a small feature, you're working on a product, or you own a business vertical, right? Irrespective of what the scope is, you own your work, and everybody appreciates that if you behave a certain way, that where you are available for answering questions related to your work, you are proactively finding gaps, and you are basically the owner of your work, right? Everybody knows that. And always be ready to adapt. That's a very common skill that these product-based companies would appreciate, because more often than not, these companies work on a wide variety of products. So when they hire candidates, they don't hire for with the expectation that this candidate would work in a specific team throughout their tenure in the company. Companies appreciate if you contribute to different products of theirs, which may require different tools and technologies, right? So it's always good to be ready to adapt, learn new things, keep growing yourself. So yeah, that's basically the behavioral skill part. All right. So let's talk about the preparation strategies. Once you understand the interview rounds of a certain company, what are the things that you can do to be better at those interviews? The first one that I always recommend are mock interviews, right? I always recommend to pick someone smarter than you. Talk to people who have more tenure in the industry. Uh, Ask them or request them to have mock interviews, and specifically ask them to provide you constructive feedback, right? uh, if you have certain like if you are good at the interviews, if you have those skills, of course there would be positive feedback. But what you really want to focus on is what you are lacking in those interviews. It could be technical skills, but it could also be that you are not communicating enough, or in a certain design approach you could have chosen a better optimized approach that you were not aware of. So through these mock interviews, the purpose is to learn, right? The purpose is to practice a real life interview, so that when the real interview comes, you are already aware of your gaps and you are working on it, right? When the real interview comes, it always helps to be calm and composed, right? Try not to be nervous, but uh, the interviewers in these companies, they are also trained to take that into account. They know that a lot of times candidates do get nervous, so they will try to make the session interactive, and so should you, right? Just behave like you are just talking to a friend in an interview. They give you the problem, try to solve the problem, try to discuss the approach, and just proceed with the interview in an interactive manner. The recruitment team, more often than not, they are on your side. So sometimes the recruitment team would also give you tips around what you should prepare for, what you should expect from the interviews. So yeah, value those tips, follow those tips, try to prepare yourself specifically for that company that you are interviewing with, because there are certain things, certain skills that are different. So yeah, that would help. During the interview, always listen to the interviewer's question carefully, because a lot of times you may have practiced certain questions, so the question sounds similar, but there would be there would be certain caveats, there would be certain turns that you would not expect. So always listen to the questions carefully. If it's not clear enough, always ask clarifying questions. Clarifying questions, asking those clarifying questions actually show that you are interested and you are communicative, and you want to make it interactive, right? And that also calms you down, gives you some time to think about it. So yeah, asking clarifying questions is also very important. Once the interview is done, uh, it's always a good habit to express your appreciation for the interview, for the opportunity that was provided to you by the recruiter, by the hiring manager. And at the end of every interview, commonly the interviewer would give you some time to ask them some questions, right? Questions like, what do you want to know about the company? Use that opportunity to demonstrate or show your interest in the company or the product, right? Ask questions about the culture, ask questions about the work life balance, ask questions about what their opinion is on a certain product of the company or policies of the company. This would help you map your skills and your ambitions well with the company policies, culture, and values. That's always good. And be ready to take the feedback once the interview is over. uh, if you get hired, you'll get feedback for the things that you were good at. If you are not hired, you would get feedback on what was lacking. So be a respectful feedback taker. Take this as a note for life. Like, always be a respectful feedback taker. It always helps you grow and fill those gaps, right? All right. So let's come to the next topic, which is very current in 2023. Uh, After discussing about the interview preparation, uh, I understand that it's harder right now. So let's talk about the layoffs and what's going on with the industry. For that, we need to first understand what exactly is a layoff or a recession and what's going on in the job market. So the the economy is cyclical in nature. What I mean by that is there is always a boom where you would see a lot of companies are hiring a lot. They have a lot of funding. The stock market is rising, and everything is going well, right? The more funding the companies have, the more projects they can deliver, the more products they can build, right? But there would always be times where the market balances itself and the stock market would go down. That would create a lack of funding for the companies, and the companies would do ruthless prioritization for the projects. So they would, because of the less funding, they would pick the projects that are beneficial, that are useful for their goals, and they would deprioritize the projects that are not generating enough revenue, right? So it's an economic cycle that these companies go through as well. Now, what contributes to this economic cycle? Various factors, and more often than not, those are like macroeconomic factors such as geopolitical climate and the industry trends, than the microeconomic factors, which would be something limited to the scope of a certain company, where it only affected the company, not the industry, right? So it's not really in your control. So be kind to people who went through layoff. Be kind to people who are in the industry struggling with this as well, while you're preparing yourself and taking like building the strategy for interviewing during this time, right? These are basically the layoffs are basically one of the cost cutting mechanisms by these companies to balance the demand versus supply in the job market. uh, Other cost cutting mechanisms would be deprioritizing the projects, as I discussed, uh, reducing additional investments like closing of offices, reducing the headcount is the same as as the layoff. So yeah, it's not uh, at a personal level. These are like just the macroeconomy coming into play, right? One more thing that you would notice during the layoffs is certain roles get impacted more than certain others, right? So since there are less hiring going on, you would see less recruiters reaching out to you as well, less job openings, and therefore be respectful in terms of communication as well. You can expect delayed communication, but there are still companies who are hiring, right? You would still see certain job openings. I still see uh, fellow colleagues or friends who are applying to the jobs right now, and they do get calls. It's lesser, like much lesser than what it was in 2021, but there are still some companies that are hiring, and this balance will shift again, right? So just be aware of it. So wanted to talk about a few tips and tricks that I have that I normally share with other mentees that I have for the job applications during this market. Right. So, first thing I would say is resilience and adaptability. Right. The acceptance goes a long way. Uh, Accept that, understand that these situations, they are not in your control. Right. These are changing market trends. So take some time to understand this, but then focus more on what your position is, right? Where you are right now in your experience, what positions are you applying for, what job roles you are applying for, and what is the impact of the current industry trends on those roles. Now, as a software engineer, uh, it's a vast industry, right? It's a vast job role. There are like plethora of skill sets that you can develop. So the first thing that I would say, keep your skills up to date for the market, right? The market is has gotten more competitive, right? And expected to get more and more competitive in the future as well, because with the tools and technologies that we as a software engineer we develop, those are to make our lives easier as well, but those also change the industry trends and the new skills that are required to manage those systems, right? One of the greatest examples would be the emergence of chat gpt and all this AI tools that are coming up, right? There are a lot of discussions around whether those AI tools would kill the jobs of software engineers, or those would just enhance the skill sets, or those would just change the skill sets required for a strong for a software engineer. I personally believe in the latter, right? It's always a game of keeping your skill sets up to date, right? Tailor your resume to highlight your accomplishments. Going back to the first slide that we had, follow a certain pattern. Make sure that you mention those skills that are required for the latest job roles, and keep practicing your programming and coding problems. So keep yourself up to date. If you are working right now, if you already have a job, and you are looking for upgrading your career, you are looking for interviews in other companies, uh, even then, keep practicing, right? One thing I would say is always try to find some time outside of your work, outside of your contribution to your current employment or education, to be prepared for the market, right? uh, if you are looking for a job right now, and you are not employed, or if you were impacted by recent layoffs, you can also leverage freelancing or contractual work to gain more experience. One thing that really helps is the positive attitude and your resume showcasing that even if you lost something, you have mechanisms to cope with it, you have mechanisms to grow further, right? So use tools like Upwork, Freelancer, TopTal. These are a few tools that I recommend everyone to register yourself out there and keep developing your skills and wait for the right opportunities to come, right? Socialize, keep meeting people, keep attending meetups, events, grow your network on LinkedIn, and for job applications, try out as many tools as you can. One of the recent things that I had done was as simple as using the Google's job search widget, and that was pretty interesting to me, because there are thousands of websites or web portals for job applications today, right? Other than the famous ones, which is like LinkedIn, Indeed, Monster.com. So you can try those as well, right? There are various job openings that I see, but unfortunately there are more applicants, so it's competitive. But positive sided that there are still job openings, right? And don't hesitate in seeking help. What I mean by that is, sometimes we feel shy of declaring that we are looking for a job or we were impacted by the layoffs. Uh, just take some time to accept the situation, understand the situation, but don't hesitate in reaching out to people uh, for referrals or for opportunities in their companies, or opportunities in their networks, if not in their own companies, right? That goes a long way. So keep networking, keep building your relationships with people. Referrals they actually increase your chance of getting a call back from recruiters compared to the online job applications. So the more people you have who can refer you to a certain job role in their company, the better chances you have. All right all right so I have the last section for on a positive note. Let's say you go through these interview processes, you navigate layoffs well. Uh, what happens when you get hired, right? What does life as a software engineer look like, and what are certain tips and tricks that could help you grow further as a software engineer, grow further in your career, right? Uh, get more impactful projects, be promoted, or navigate through your career through different roles, because once you're a software engineer, there are various roles that you can also transition into if you don't see yourself as a software engineer all your life, right? There are management positions, there are project management positions, and all that. So we will talk about that. But before going there, I want you to take 5 minutes for any questions that you have for the topics that we discussed so far. So, Kensley, feel free to let me know if you have any questions that we should prioritize, and I would be happy to answer those before we move
Mhm.
into that.
Absolutely. Guys, if you have any questions, again, feel free to drop them in the comments and we can take those. We're going to, just take this brief pause to answer any questions that you might have. We haven't had any questions come in yet, so we can wait just a minute, but that has been great information. I'll add on to, in terms of, what you said about asking for help or putting yourself out there. One of the things that High Counselor can help you do is start to facilitate some of this conversation. So remember at the beginning, I talked about that automatic email networking and how you'll attend those sessions on networking. And so much of that is just practicing and having that confidence to put yourself out there. And so if you feel like you need that help or support, definitely attend that info session and Learn has an assessment platform. So if you're looking for additional support or help or practice, definitely check out the assessments that we have to offer as well. Any questions right now? I know that was a lot of information, a lot of really good info. Okay, we do have one question. How can I get feedback about the interview from recruiters and interviewers?
Got it. So, yeah, thanks, Alexander, for the question. And that's a great one. Uh, I would say, from my experience working with different companies, it actually depends on the company policy, to be very candid and honest. But after every interview, wait for the recruiters to reach out to you, and more often than not, that's the time when you have that conversation. The recruiters will tell you how your interview went. They would not tell you how your specific interview or feedback looked like, right? Let's say you have 4 to 5 rounds of interviews for a software engineering role in a company, right? It could include programming rounds, system design rounds. It could include behavioral rounds as well, or which is also called leadership rounds. They may not tell you what each interviewer said about you, but they would give you an overall picture of, let's say that, okay, you were not offered the job role, right? What were the gaps, right? What are the areas of improvement for you? So that's the time when you have that conversation. If they didn't mention it, they just called you or sent you an email, you can, like, feel free to ask them for a high level feedback back, right? And that would help you grow as an interviewer as well, right? So yeah, that's basically the answer.
Thank you. Okay, we have another question. How much time should an entry-level software engineer be spending on leak code, DSA problems?
Okay. All right, I see that Nida, I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing your name right. Yeah, thanks for your question. And this is also one of the most common questions, because while applying to the job applications, uh, it's always good to time box it, right? The most common timeline that I have seen is maybe 2 months, but I'm saying that number just to give you an idea about how to time box, right? What to take into consideration. But it frankly depends on every individual. It depends on where you are in your career, right? If, let's say, you have always been practicing let's say you have always been practicing lead code problems and you're pretty good at programming and coding skills, right? And now you are applying to companies. You have had years of practice, so you may need very less practice, fresh practice for applying to those companies. But if you are someone who are coming fresh from the university, and or it's been a while since you have practiced those, I would say like 2 months, and prepare a strategy as well. It's not about the time you spend there, it's about how you strategize, how you practice those problems, right? So I was talking about the categories of problems on lead code, for example, easy, medium, hard, right? uh, so calibrate where you are you able to solve all the easy problems? Are you confident that you would be able to solve all the easy problems? Start directly with the medium ones, right? If you are solving easy problems and you realize that, okay, I'm not able to solve the problems, but the reasoning for that is not that I don't know the programming language concepts, but because I don't understand what data structures are applied, right? When should a linked list be used? When should a queue be used? Whether it's a tree question or something else, right? In that case, it's it's a hint that you should practice more data structures concepts than lead code, right? So try to calibrate yourself and decide your strategy. That's what would define what your timeline, right? Also keep in mind that when you apply to these companies, scheduling those interviews also take certain time. Like once you apply to the job role, let's say the recruiter reached out to you, scheduling the interviews would also be dependent on the availability of interviewers, right? And how much the company is hiring. So that also gives you some time to practice more specifically for that company. So what you can do is spend like a month or 2 months just practicing lead code and system design problems in a generic way, and then start applying to the companies, and then start focusing on the company specific culture or types of problems that they ask, right? That's what would define your timeline.
Thank you. Going off of that, do you have any tips for overcoming tough coding tests? John says that most of the time they can be overwhelming.
Yeah, thanks for the question, John. uh, I would say just practice, practice, and more practice. As I said, it's basically like maths. If you are new to maths, you have to start from the basic theorems. Similarly, if you are new to programming, you have to start from the basics. It can look a bit overwhelming, but what I would say is everybody has their own pace, right? So never compare yourself with someone else practicing the same set of problems, or someone else applying to the jobs as well. Two people can be at a very different stage in their lives, right? Can have a very different skill sets. And keep in mind, uh, these interviews, of course, they would look at all these skills that we talked about, but you may have certain skills. Let's say you want to practice more and more on the programming side, and that feels like overwhelming, but maybe you are good at system design, right? Maybe you are good at communication skills or the soft skills or the leadership skills that we talked about. So try to calibrate yourself and don't compare your pace with anyone else. If the problems feel overwhelming, start from a lower difficulty level, I would say. So if lead code medium feels more overwhelming, start with easy ones, right? That would give you more practice. If graph problems, which is a data structure to be used, if those problems seem very difficult, or dynamic programming or greedy based algorithms, certain algorithms or concepts feel very difficult, make sure that you practice the other concepts, other data structures really well, right? So work on your strengths and then spend some time on working on your areas of improvement. That's one tip that I would give you.
Perfect. We'll take one more question and then save the last question that was just submitted for the end, because we do want you to be able to share the rest of your presentation with us. But these two questions, they kind of go together. So in terms of a resume for a fresher and then for someone with around 2 years of experience, typically how long should that resume be?
Okay. All right. Thanks for that question. Normally, I would recommend a single page. Okay. Uh, but having a two-page resume is also not bad. Not more than that, right? Also, when you prepare a resume, let's say it's 2 pages or a single page, try not to have a lot of white spaces. It should not look like that you have just tried to create more space by increasing the font size or by adding more white space, right? That is very common when when we are early in our career, right? We don't have experience to put on our resume. So what should I put there, right? It would basically be empty spaces. I would put my skills. I would put my university projects. So try to be precise, but try to be concise as well, right? Uh, Limit it to one page and follow the sequence that I talked about in my first slide. Focus on your professional experience if you have any. If you are a university grad, focus on your university projects or the work you have done. Focus on the impact. That's the first section. The second section is your education and skills after that, right? So the majority of your resume, if it's one page resume, should be your work experience. Show them the work that you have done, any past internships, any full-time employment that you had before if you have some experience, and university projects. What was your impact? How many people did you work with? All those things are more important. So yeah, short answer, one page is the ideal one.
Perfect. All right. I'm going to turn it back over to you so we can finish up the presentation. I promise that we'll get to the other questions and continue to think about additional questions that you all may want to ask.
All right. So yeah, let's quickly go over the last section that I had in my presentation. And then yeah, I will keep some time for more Q&A at the end of it. All right. So once you go through these interview process, you get hired to a company. I wanted to tell you more about what are the things that would help you grow further as a software engineer. The first one is growth mindset, right? I talked about adaptability a little bit in the middle of the slide. What I meant by that is you should never stop learning. One thing I tell everyone is knowledge is the key, right? As a software engineer, you would own a small feature or a product or a business vertical, depending on where you are in your experience. And there would be people who would be relying on you to have knowledge about the work that you did, right? Have knowledge about the component that you own. Since you own that work as a leader, you dive deep into it, right? You know in and out about it. But once you complete that, there would be more opportunities, and that may require certain different skill sets, a different programming language, a different technology that you are using, something in the industry that was never used before, right? So take these opportunities to learn, consistently learn, continuously learn, always throughout your career, right? Don't be afraid of uh, taking up challenges or unknown territories, right, in your work. Those are opportunities for you to grow, and everybody in these companies, they appreciate someone who wants to learn, and they showcase technical technical breadth of a skill set instead of just being limited to one specific technical stack, right? Having diverse skill set goes going back to what I was saying about adaptability. That helps a lot, right? As you work on different projects, you would gain different like expertise in different stack, different programming languages, and then you can choose if you want to specialize in something further in your career, right? But for early career applicants, I would definitely say that always explore different domains and try to learn more on those. Try to work with different people so that you have those collaboration experiences as well, so that you have people who provide you feedback, right? You also need someone to tell you exactly what your gaps are and what you should learn, right? Let's say you are really good in one technology stack, like you are really good in that domain of work and you can solve problems easily, but there is another area that your team or your company works in that you have not gained expertise yet, right? So working with your peers or taking feedback from your seniors would help you grow in that area as well. So try to engage in team projects that make you explore different domains. So that's one of the critical advices that I would give you. Have a growth mindset. You should always continue growing. This is majorly on the technical side of it. Second one is on the behavioral side of it. So we talked about the behavioral skills that are very common in these interviews, right? That's one thing that actually is to check whether you are fit for the company's culture, and those are the exact skills that would help you grow in your career in the company as well, right? The first one was own your work, be a leader of your component that you own, dive deep into it, have deep knowledge for that component, so that whenever someone asks you questions, you are able to answer them, and be proactive about it, right? Find areas of improvements yourself in those components instead of waiting for someone else to tell you that okay, something was broken, or we can introduce a new feature. Taking initiatives is appreciated a lot, right? Second is ruthless prioritization. When we were talking about layoffs, we talked about ruthless prioritization by these companies, right? In your day-to-day work, you own your work-life balance, right? The companies, like the team, would always have work, like there would always be projects going on, but understand that everybody has the same amount of time. Everybody has 24 hours. If you are committed to 8 hours a day or 40 hours a week in a company, everybody is committed to the same amount of time, right? So just working extra hours, it doesn't show that you are like hardworking. Completing the work and saying no to things that you cannot complete within that timeline actually shows efficiency, right? So manage your time well, define task slots that, okay, today I'm going to work on so and so tasks. Tomorrow at this time, I would look at code reviews, I would read certain documentations, or I would go through certain training. So define your task slots, right? And manage your time well. Third thing is professional network. When you work in a company, make sure that you know your team, you get to meet other people in your organization. uh, Setting up one-on-ones just for your introduction and talking about the work that you are doing and understanding the work that they are doing, that is a pretty good advice for growing in a company, right? And discuss ideas. When I say set up one-on-one, I don't mean just chit chat. I mean like be curious about the work they are doing, be ready to seek feedback from them, right? If you are meeting folks who are more tenured in the industry, they would have pretty good tips or advice that would help you grow in your team, and also deliver your project more efficiently or in a better way, right? What are the things that they used to take care of when they were in your position, right? So that feedback from tenured people, that is always helpful. And I normally participate in mentorship. I have a lot of mentees that I have advised in the past, and I have had a lot of mentors that I have learned a lot from, right? So if you gain certain experience, if you have expertise in a certain domain, try to grow your team, try to contribute to that, right? Mentor other people who are newer to you than you in the industry, right? So talk about your experiences, guide them, and they would appreciate that as well as the team would appreciate that, right? So that's the third thing, like building this network, learning from others, and passing your guidance to others. This would help you a lot. All right. So that brings us to the end of the presentation. In conclusion, just to reiterate on whatever we covered, practice as much as possible, right? Focus on the skills that are required in those interviews: programming, system design, all that. Pick certain portals. We talked about certain portals like LeetCode, or Freelancer, or Grokking Your System Design Interviews is another tool. So focus on that, right? Or once you get hired, always focus on diverse skill set. That would also help you navigate the layoffs because the skills they keep upgrading in the industry. So keep yourself up to date on both the technical and the leadership skills, right? Regarding the layoffs, as I said, it's a cyclical nature of the economy. So I know that there is like it's going down right now. It will bounce back, right? And what I would ask you to do is be prepared for it, right? Keep working on your skills. Be prepared for when the right time comes, when more opportunities come up, and always be kind. I know that the layoffs specifically are it's very frustrating for people. It's annoying to apply to jobs and not get calls. That happens. I have seen people struggle with that a lot. Don't hesitate to seek help. Increase your network, meet people, talk to people who are going through the same thing, and if you can help them, offer help as well, right? So seek help, offer help. All right. So that's it for today's presentation. I know we are almost on time. Kensley, we can take some questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we still have some time for questions, so feel free to drop those in the chat. We're going to go back to one of the questions that was asked during the previous break. So, do you have any suggestions for undergrad students who want to land a job in the software engineering field but do not have any internship opportunities or experience yet?
Yes, definitely. Internships have also been tough during the layoff period during this year and last year. So one thing that I would recommend is look into freelancing. right, or contractual work. Uh, that would help you build up your resume better as well. So the way internships help is you work on something in a certain company that adds to your experience, and you add that to your resume, right? You show the impact that you had as an intern. You can do the same with the freelancing opportunities, right? So look at Upwork, look at Freelancer, look at TopTal. I'm sure High Counselor would be able to help with that as well. So try to get those personal projects and try to add those to your resume, right? So that would definitely help and build your skills as well.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, definitely check LinkedIn for those live projects that we have. And then even within the High Counselor program, we have additional projects that you could work on. So all good information. Okay, let's see. Do I have to prepare a resume separately for each company or job that candidate or person is applying to?
Okay, so I'm assuming that you are applying to a single job role. So have a resume for the job role, not the company. The job role can be software engineer, right? So build a resume for the software engineering role and provide experiences that you had, relevant experience there, and skills required for that job. You don't have to build separate resumes for different companies. If you are applying to different job roles as such, let's say software engineering, data science, an engineering manager, or a technical program manager, these are different roles in these tech companies. Different job roles require different resumes. If you have relevant experiences in those job roles, and if you are open to those job applications as well, build separate resumes for those.
Thank you. Would doing any cloud certifications help for product-based companies?
Uh, so short answer is yes, but longer answer, it depends on what role you are looking at. If you are looking at a software engineering role, it's not mandatory to have those certifications. In the interviews, they would not ask you questions related to any specific technological stack. So, for example, AWS or Azure, they would not ask you questions specific to AWS or Azure, right? What would help more is practicing those lead code problems, practicing the data structure concepts, algorithms, and system design problems, right? Those would help more. If you are applying to a cloud administrator role or a solutions architect role, definitely those certifications matter a lot, because that shows that you have knowledge. Those roles are less about coding, but more about architecting systems with a specific technological stack, right? So that's where those certifications help.
Thank you. So in freelance, trying to get freelance roles, but still not getting any response. So any tips for that?
Okay, so I'm not sure. So it depends on the profile. One thing I would recommend is actually two things. One is add skills, right? See if the skills that are required in the current industry, if you have those in your freelancing profile, right? The skills that are more in demand. If you don't, I would say develop those skills and add it to your profile so that you go get more visibility from companies that require skills in their projects, right? The second thing I would recommend is network. Start attending more meetup events, more conferences, meet more people, because as a freelancer, one aspect of that is also being a salesman for yourself, right? Selling your skills, like presenting yourself that I am able to do this certain type of project, I'm able to complete this, I have certain skills, right? Showcasing your skills and increasing that visibility goes a long way, right? So start building your network and start meeting people to showcase your skills.
Great. We've got one last question. So how and when would be a good time to start the conversation for a raise or a promotion?
Okay. So this again, this can vary from company to company. More often than not, the product-based companies, they have policies around when you get the increment. As far as the promotion goes, see what's the difference between the expectations of your current role and the next role that you want to move into, right? Normally, these companies have predefined expectations where it majorly depends on the scope of your work, right? It majorly depends on the influence you have. For example, an entry level software developer, they are expected to execute well, for the problems that have solutions defined, right? They are not expected to dive deep into a problem space, find solution, design for it, and then solve it. They would have a certain mid-level engineers or senior engineers who have designed the solution, but your execution should be foolproof, right? So that's an expectation. But if you look at mid-level, right, certain leadership, certain mentoring, and certain skills around diving deep into unknown territories and finding the solution for them is expected out of you, not just execution, right? So when you want to move into the next level or want to get promoted, think about whether you have the scope of work to fulfill the expectations of the next role. If you don't, talk to your manager or talk to your management chain about how to get those opportunities. What are the available projects that you can start working on that would allow you to showcase those skill sets, right? So that's the right time to right approach to go into a promotion.
Thank you so much. All right, guys, we're going to be dropping a few links in the chat. So definitely want to get your feedback from today's session. So we're going to be dropping the feedback form in the chat. So just tell us if how today's session went, if you thought it was valuable, and then if there are any types of sessions or information that you would like to see in the future. We also want to encourage you to apply to our upcoming batch on May 30th. Again, that start date is on a Tuesday because of the upcoming holiday. And so you are welcome to apply to that upcoming cohort. We do have an info session that is coming up tomorrow night. So we're going to drop the link for registering for that info session as well, if you just want to get more information and know how we can help. And then we do want to make you aware of an opportunity to network with employers across the U.S. It's going to be a virtual job fair on June 1st. And so this is going to be a really great opportunity for you to stretch those networking skills and really just put yourself out there, practice some of the things that Sumit has provided you in today's presentation. And then lastly, want to drop a link for the live projects that we've got coming up. Definitely would encourage you to head over to our LinkedIn page. Again, if you're viewing from YouTube, make sure you check out our LinkedIn page for those for those real world live projects. And then I would like to also encourage you just to follow us on social media, on Instagram at High Counselor 2022, and on LinkedIn. It's a great way to stay engaged and follow our awesome and sometimes funny content, and know what we've got going on, the different events that are coming up, stuff like that. So thank you again for joining us today and providing us with those interviewing strategies, those resume tips, and really just providing some inspiration for us too. I think that was super helpful and definitely spoke to me. So I'll ask, do you have any closing comments or anything else that you want to leave our viewers with?
Yeah, and thank you for this opportunity. Always happy to help. I hope that the session was useful. And yeah, I'm looking forward to the feedback. I also provide free mentorship on ADP List. So feel free to search my name. That's why I went to the first slide. Search my name on the ADP List. I don't have the link right now. And feel free to book a slot if you want to talk to me personally, if you want any advice further. And feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn as well. But yeah, thanks for this opportunity. It was great talking about these things. These things seem pretty simple and generic, but it's still better to talk about these so that people who are new to the industry, who are just trying to find these roles and apply to these jobs, they get something happen. Right?
Absolutely. And sometimes it is just going back to the basics. So,
Yep.
and just making sure that all of those are covered. So thank you so much. We appreciate you all for joining us, and just wish you a wonderful rest of the day leading into the weekend, and hope to see you all next time. So thank you.
All right. Thanks, everyone.